That morning, when I walked into the Harris County courtroom, I was wearing a $20 shirt from Walmart. The opposing attorney suddenly stopped mid-sentence and pointed straight at me. He smiled. "Your Honor," he said, "this is proof that this man has nothing in his hands. Look at that cheap shirt, it's nothing more than a rag." He paused, glancing at me as if I were an object being appraised. His son deserves a better life than what he can possibly provide. He spoke loud enough for the court reporter to record every syllable. Because there are lessons in this life you cannot teach with words. They have to be demonstrated. And I had spent 3 years building exactly that demonstration. The people in this story had every opportunity in the world to behave with decency. They simply chose not to. And those choices cost them everything. My name is Daniel Reeves. I'm 54 years old. I was the founder of a software company, and I am now a full-time father to a 17-year-old named Marcus, a kid who deserved far better than what his parents put him through. I want to be upfront with you. I am not a dramatic man. I don't raise my voice in arguments. I don't make scenes at restaurants or send late-night texts when I'm angry. I solve problems the same way I always have, quietly, methodically, with more patience than most people find comfortable to be around. Which is exactly why what happened that morning caught everyone in that courtroom completely off guard. Everyone. Except me. 3 years before I walked into that courthouse in a Walmart shirt, I was sitting in a glass-walled conference room on the 14th floor of a building in Houston's Galleria district, watching 4 attorneys clink glasses of champagne over a deal that had just made me, very quietly, an extraordinarily wealthy man. $230 million. That is what Reeves Digital sold for. 15 years of missed dinners, 3 in the morning server crashes, a marriage I had been watching die from the inside for at least 2 of those years before I could finally admit what I was seeing. The attorneys were celebrating. The buyers were shaking hands with the enthusiasm of men who had just acquired something significant. I sat at the head of the table, signed my name 11 times, and felt absolutely nothing. Not because I was ungrateful. Because I already knew what was waiting at home. 6 months before that signing, on a Tuesday evening in our house in River Oaks, the one with the wraparound porch that Vanessa had chosen and I had paid for without hesitation, I found out about Trevor Ashworth. There was no dramatic discovery, no lipstick on a collar, no suspicious call at midnight. I found it the way observant men always do, in silence, a pattern of small things that didn't add up, until they all added up at the same moment. The way she tilted her phone screen away when I walked into the room. The way her laugh sounded different on certain calls, lighter, younger, like a version of herself she had decided I no longer deserved to hear. The way she stopped arguing with me. And Vanessa loved to argue. When someone who thrives on conflict goes suddenly quiet, they have found somewhere else to put their energy. I sat with that information for 4 days before I made a single move. Then I called Patricia Chen. Patricia didn't have billboard ads on I-10. No television commercials, no lobby with her name spelled out in chrome letters. What she had was a mind that worked like a precision instrument and a reputation as the quietest, most devastatingly effective family attorney in Harris County. My business counsel had mentioned her once, almost as an afterthought. If you ever find yourself in genuine trouble, Daniel, call Patricia. She doesn't lose. I called her on a Thursday morning from my car, parked 2 blocks from my office so no one could overhear. Chen Law. Patricia, this is Daniel Reeves. I need a divorce attorney, and I need someone who understands asset protection law at a federal level. A pause on the line. How complicated is your situation? I just sold my company for $230 million, and my wife is involved with the attorney who is going to represent her against me. Silence. Then, Mr. Reeves, don't move anything. Don't say anything. Don't let her know that you know. I will see you Monday morning. First thing. That was the beginning. What Patricia and I built over the months that followed was not revenge. I want to be absolutely clear about that. It was architecture. We moved my assets legally, transparently, with every transaction fully documented, into a private federal trust. Clean paper trail, the kind of financial restructuring that takes months and leaves records so meticulous they practically gleam. While that was happening, I made another decision that surprised even Patricia. I accepted a position as a medical records clerk at Memorial Hermann Hospital. You want to do what? Patricia looked at me from across her desk as if I had suggested something genuinely dangerous. Records clerk, modest salary, regular hours, completely unremarkable. Daniel, You are worth what Vanessa and Trevor can find, I said, cutting her off gently, is exactly what I choose to leave on the surface. Let them find a file clerk making $40,000 a year. Let them build their entire case on that man. She was quiet for a long moment. That is either the most brilliant thing I've heard in 20 years of practice, or you've watched one too many films. Both things can be true. She laughed despite herself. Then she went back to work. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Montrose, not far from Westmont Academy, where Marcus was finishing his junior year. Nothing luxurious. Clean. Functional. A couch I bought at an estate sale, a kitchen table with one leg slightly shorter than the rest, and a coffee maker from 2018 that wheezed every single morning like it was registering a formal complaint with the universe. I loved that apartment more than I had loved the River Oaks house in years. There was an honesty to it. Everything in it was exactly what it appeared to be. Vanessa kept the house. She kept the cars. She kept the life that looked from the outside like a total victory. And Trevor was confident, dangerously confident. I never met him in person, but I recognized the type immediately. Expensive suit, aggressive posture, the kind of attorney who treats courtrooms like theater stages and opposing parties like props in his own performance. He called Patricia once, early in the process, before either of them understood how little they actually knew. Patricia relayed the conversation word for word. "Tell your client," Trevor had said. "We are prepared to be reasonable. But if he wants to make this difficult, we have everything we need to bury him." Patricia paused. "I'll pass that along." She called me the moment she hung up. "He thinks he has everything locked up." "I know," I said. "Doesn't that concern you?" "No. Because a man who believes he has already won stops looking for what he has missed." She went quiet. Patricia did that frequently when we spoke, that particular silence of someone genuinely processing rather than just waiting for their turn to respond. Then, "Daniel, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Are you all right?" "Actually, all right?" I thought about it for a real second, not a polite one. "I'm better than I've been in years," I said, and I meant every word. Here is something nobody tells you about choosing to live simply when you have no obligation to. It is clarifying in a way nothing else is. I woke at 6 every morning, made my protesting coffee maker earn its place on the counter, drove my 2019 Camry to the hospital, filed patient records, ate lunch from a paper bag at my desk, drove home. Twice a week, every Wednesday and every Saturday, without a single exception, I picked up Marcus. That kid was my entire reason for being. Marcus was the kind of teenager who noticed everything, too perceptive for his own comfort, old enough to feel the tension between his parents without being old enough to put a name on it. He had my eyes, his mother's stubbornness, and a laugh that could genuinely turn a gray day around. I showed up to every single one of his school events in plain, ordinary clothing. I never missed a parent conference at Westmont Academy. Once I brought my grandmother's cast-iron chili to a school potluck, and 3 other parents asked for the recipe before the night was over. Vanessa brought a store-bought pasta salad in a designer bowl. Nobody asked for that recipe. Vanessa and Trevor, meanwhile, were getting comfortable. Too comfortable. There were messages, obtained through entirely legal interception channels, where they mocked me openly in group chats that included her sister and 2 close friends. He went from running a company to filing papers in a hospital. Honestly, it's kind of sad. At least we know he can't afford a real lawyer. This is going to be the easiest case Trevor's ever handled. I read every single message. I screenshotted everything, and I said absolutely nothing. I want to stop here for a moment and talk to you directly. Because if you have ever sat across a table or a room or a phone screen from someone who was laughing at your life, laughing at what you were wearing, what you were earning, where you were living, and you felt the pull of that humiliation in your chest, the desire to stand up and prove them wrong right then. I understand that feeling completely. I had that feeling. I just chose to do something with it that required patience instead of noise. The night before the hearing, I laid my plain Walmart shirt flat across the bed. White, simple, no logo. The kind of shirt that says, "I am not here to impress you," which was exactly the point. Patricia called at 9:15. "Daniel, everything is in position. Trust documentation, forensic financials, asset protection orders, all filed and sealed." She took a breath. "I filed formal advance notification with the court clerk's office yesterday regarding the federal asset protection filing. Judge Morrison's clerk has already been privately briefed. The moment your name appears in that docket, they know exactly what they are looking at. I smiled at that. That was Patricia always positioned 3 moves ahead. The bar complaint against Trevor filed 14 days ago, certified mail confirmation received. Good, I said. Are you certain about going in dressed the way you plan to? Yes. One more thing. Let Trevor go first tomorrow. Let him do his full performance. That was always the plan. Are you nervous? I looked at the shirt, smoothed it once with the flat of my palm. I have been preparing for 3 years, I said. The only person in that courtroom tomorrow who should be nervous is the man who thinks he already knows how this ends. I hung up, set my alarm, and slept like a man who has nothing to hide, because that is exactly what I was. I arrived at the Harris County Family Law Center 40 minutes early, not out of anxiety, out of strategy. I wanted to be already seated, already still, already absolutely present when Trevor walked through the door. There is an enormous psychological advantage in being the person who is already there. You are the gravity in the room. You are the fixed point. Let the other person enter, scan for you, locate you. Spend the first 30 seconds trying to read your expression while you give them precisely nothing to read. I placed my thin folder on the respondent's table, folded my hands on top of it, and waited. The courtroom was smaller than people imagine these things to be. Wood paneling. Fluorescent lights humming at a frequency specifically designed to make everyone slightly uncomfortable. The kind of room where lives get decided under lighting that belongs in a storage corridor. I had closed deals in boardrooms 10 times this size for considerably less at stake. A few people filtered in. The court clerk at his station near the front. The stenographer arranging her equipment. The bailiff by the door, a large, composed man with the expression of someone who had witnessed every variation of human drama and had long since stopped being surprised by any of it. I adjusted my $20 shirt once. After that, I left it alone. Then the doors opened. Trevor Ashworth walked in like he owned the building, not figuratively, literally, physically, in the way his body occupied space before he even fully entered the room. Charcoal suit, custom fitted, shoes that cost more than 2 months of my clerk's salary, a burgundy tie that announced, without words, I dress this way because I can. He had the kind of jaw that seemed purpose-built for attorney headshots in glossy professional magazines. Vanessa walked in beside him, not literally on his arm, but emotionally she was leaning on the man completely. She was dressed impeccably, hair perfect, with the expression of a woman who had already written the final chapter and had only shown up today to collect what was owed. Trevor spotted me immediately. His eyes dropped to my shirt and stayed there 1 beat too long. Then he leaned toward Vanessa, said something low, and she pressed her lips together to contain a smile. I watched every second of it. I gave them nothing back. They settled at the plaintiff's table. Trevor arranged his documents with the unhurried precision of a surgeon laying out instruments. A thick accordion file, 2 yellow legal pads, a leather portfolio that probably cost more than my kitchen table and coffee maker combined. I had 1 thin folder. He looked at it. Then he looked at me. And then he smiled a real smile, the kind that comes from genuine certainty. Go ahead and smile, I thought. The curtain goes up in 10 minutes. Judge Elaine Morrison entered, and the bailiff called the room to order. She was not what you would expect. Mid-50s, silver hair pulled back neatly, reading glasses on a thin chain. The kind of face that had processed decades of human desperation without losing either its sharpness or its sense of proportion. She settled her materials, looked at both tables with the calm of a person who had nowhere else to be and 0 patience for theater. We are here in the matter of Reeves versus Reeves. Counsel for the plaintiff, you may proceed. Trevor rose like he had been waiting his entire career for exactly this moment. And I will give the man this much: he was good. Genuinely, professionally, impressively good. He walked Judge Morrison through his case with the smooth authority of someone who had executed this performance 100 times. He produced the financial records, the ones they believed were mine, and presented them with the measured confidence of a man holding cards he believed no one could match. Your Honor, the respondent in this matter presents a fairly uncomplicated financial picture. Annual income of approximately $42,000. No significant savings, no substantial assets. Debt obligations that exceed his monthly income by, he paused, precisely for effect nearly 38%. Vanessa was nodding slightly at the plaintiff's table. Small, controlled nods. The nods of a woman watching a plan execute exactly as designed. Trevor was not finished. This court should know that the respondent arrived here this morning, and here he turned, just slightly, toward me in a shirt purchased at Walmart. While his son attends Westmont Academy, a private institution whose tuition this man demonstrably cannot pay. Your Honor, my client has carried this family emotionally and financially for years, while the respondent has contributed nothing of substance and offers this child no stable path forward. He sat, smoothed his tie. Vanessa exhaled at the plaintiff's table, and I thought, keep going, Trevor. You are almost at the part where everything falls apart. Judge Morrison looked at me over her glasses. Her eyes carried something I recognized, the quiet attentiveness of a person who has already noticed something the room hasn't caught yet. Respondent, your full name for the record, please. I straightened in my chair. Spoke clearly, calmly, in the voice of a man who has been waiting 3 years to say exactly 4 words. Daniel Reeves. Your Honor. The room didn't explode. There were no gasps. It simply shifted. The way air pressure shifts just before a storm arrives. That specific silence that settles over a room when something important has just happened and only 2 people know what it is. Judge Morrison's pen stopped moving. Here is what Trevor didn't know. What Vanessa didn't know. What no one in that courtroom knew except me, and a court clerk who had received very specific instructions from Patricia Chen the afternoon before. The clerk had already pulled the sealed federal asset protection filing, had already verified the name, had already placed the certified documentation in a sealed envelope on Judge Morrison's desk before the building opened that morning, had already walked her through it in chambers, privately, before Vanessa or Trevor had set foot inside. Judge Morrison was not discovering anything in that moment. She was confirming it. She looked up slowly, turned to her clerk with one precise nod, the kind that carries a specific meaning. The clerk stood immediately, walked to the filing cabinet behind his station, and returned with a thick, official federal document bearing an embossed seal. I recognized from the day Patricia showed me the certification confirmation. He placed it on the judge's desk without a word. Trevor leaned toward Vanessa. Administrative matter, routine. Don't worry. She nodded. I said nothing. Judge Morrison opened the envelope, reviewed the cover page, not with the expression of someone reading something for the first time, but with the expression of someone confirming what they already know before stating it on the record. She set it on the desk, folded her hands, and looked at Trevor Ashworth with an expression that made the entire courtroom go completely still. Counsel. A pause. A pause that carried real weight. Before you continue, this court needs to address something. Of course, Your Honor. The financial records you presented as evidence this morning have been cross-referenced against a sealed federal asset protection filing registered under the respondent's name. She paused. Let it sit in the air. The records you presented to this court do not reflect this man's actual financial position. Another pause. Slower, more deliberate. They don't even come close. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever heard in my life. Trevor's smile didn't fade. It disappeared. Instantly. Like a light switch. One moment it was there. The next moment it simply wasn't. He turned to Vanessa. Vanessa turned to him. What does that mean? She whispered. Her voice had a new quality, something tight and uncertain that had not been there 60 seconds ago. Trevor opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time that entire morning, Trevor Ashworth had nothing to say. And I, sitting in my $20 Walmart shirt, hands folded over my thin folder, thought, and we haven't even opened the folder yet. There is a specific kind of silence that only exists in courtrooms. Not peaceful silence, not comfortable silence. The silence of a room full of people collectively holding their breath because something irreversible is approaching. And everyone can feel it, even the ones who don't yet understand what they're sensing. That was the silence floating over that room. Trevor was still standing, technically. But something had left the man. That expensive, carefully constructed confidence had drained from him the way air leaves a punctured tire, not all at once, but steadily, irreversibly. What remained was just a man in a very fine suit beginning to understand that he had walked into the wrong room with the wrong documents against the wrong man. He just didn't yet know how wrong. Judge Morrison looked at me. Mr. Reeves, I understand you have documentation to present. Yes, Your Honor. I opened the folder. Now I need you to understand something about that folder. Thin, plain, the kind you buy in a pack of 10 at any office supply store. Trevor's accordion file weighed several pounds. His leather portfolio alone cost more than everything I was wearing. But what was inside my folder had taken 3 full years to build, and it had been constructed with the care and precision of something meant to last. I placed the documents on the table, one by one, quietly, methodically, the way you lay cards down when you have been waiting the entire game for this particular hand. First, the legal restructuring records. Every single asset transferred to the private trust, completely documented. Every transaction certified, dated, verified. Clean, transparent, untouchable. 3 years of careful, legal, surgical, financial architecture that Trevor had never thought to look for because he had been too busy celebrating a case he had already decided he'd won. Assuming is an expensive habit. Second, the forensic financial analysis prepared by Patricia's team. The real numbers. Not the file clerk making $42,000 a year that Trevor had constructed his entire argument around, but the man beneath that carefully constructed surface. The man who had taken Reeves Digital from 3 people in a rented office in Midtown Houston to a $230 million acquisition. I watched it happen in real time across Trevor's face. The way his eyes moved over the numbers. The way his jaw tightened incrementally with each page he turned. The way his legal pad sat completely untouched in front of him because there was nothing left to write that could save him. He had stopped taking notes. Third, 3 sworn affidavits. Marcus's homeroom teacher at Westmont Academy, his school counselor, his soccer coach. All 3 documenting the same pattern across the same 3-year period, a father who showed up to everything, consistently, without exception, and a mother who had, on multiple documented occasions, attempted to interfere with that access. Parental alienation, in writing, under oath, from 3 individuals with absolutely no stake in the outcome of this case. Vanessa made a small sound at the plaintiff's table. Not words, just a sound. The specific sound of someone feeling the floor open up beneath them. Then I placed the final document on the table. Slid it forward slowly. No flourish. No eye contact with Trevor to telegraph what was coming. Just paper. Your Honor, the final document is a formal complaint filed with the Texas State Bar 14 days ago against opposing counsel, documenting the deliberate presentation of fabricated financial evidence in these proceedings. The certified mail receipt confirming delivery is the last page. The room did not murmur. It went completely, absolutely, perfectly still. Trevor came to his feet so fast his chair scraped backward across the floor, a sharp, ugly sound that made 3 people in the gallery flinch visibly. Objection. These documents are filed and certified with this court 14 days ago, Your Honor. My voice was calm, almost conversational. The certified receipt is the final page, as I mentioned. Judge Morrison was already reading. Trevor reached for the document with hands that were no longer entirely steady, turned to the last page, stared at the certified seal with the expression of a man who opened a door, expecting a room, and found an entirely different building standing on the other side. His hands were trembling. He looked at Vanessa. She looked back. And in that single exchange, no words, no gestures, nothing but 2 people's eyes meeting. I watched their entire alliance fracture clean down the middle. That was the moment the rear doors of the courtroom opened. Patricia Chen entered as if she had all the time in the world. She was not a dramatic woman, composed, precise, the kind of attorney who let her documentation speak, and never required the room to acknowledge that she was the most prepared person in it. She gave me a small nod from across the courtroom. Small, precise, exactly on time. Behind her came 2 federal process servers in plain clothes, no uniforms, no visible credentials, just 2 very calm, very purposeful people walking directly toward Trevor's table with the quiet efficiency of professionals who do this without ceremony and feel nothing particular about it. One of them placed a document in front of Trevor without a word. Trevor looked down at it. Read the first paragraph, and sat down very, very slowly, the way a man sits when his legs have quietly decided they cannot fully be trusted. Vanessa grabbed his arm. Trevor, what is that? What is that paper? He didn't answer immediately. Trevor, it's a federal subpoena, he said. His voice had a new texture now, hollow, stripped of every quality that had made it so commanding 40 minutes earlier. They want every document I used to build this case. Vanessa stared at him. Why? Why would they want that? Because he set the paper on the table with careful, deliberate hands, as if it might detonate, presenting fabricated financial records in a proceeding that involves a federally protected trust isn't just a violation of the state bar code, Vanessa. A pause. It's a federal crime. The words landed in that room like stones dropped into still water, heavy, spreading outward from a single point in slow, widening rings. Vanessa turned to look at him. Really look. And I watched the exact moment it happened, the moment she understood that the man she had trusted with everything, the man she had chosen over her marriage, the man who had sat across from her for months, promising that this would be easy and fast and clean, had used her. You told me those records were real, she whispered. He said nothing. You told me you had everything handled. Her voice fractured somewhere in the middle of the sentence. Trevor, you told me those records were real. He still said nothing. And in that silence, Vanessa got her answer. Judge Morrison had seen enough. She set the final document on her desk, removed her glasses, and looked at the courtroom with the measured weight of 23 years on the bench behind every word she was about to say. When she spoke, every person in that room stopped breathing. This court finds that the plaintiff's financial claims are entirely without merit, based on documentation that is now subject to federal review. A pause, deliberate. Primary custody of the minor Marcus Reeves is awarded to the respondent, Daniel Reeves, effective immediately. Vanessa made a sound I will not describe. The plaintiff's personal assets are hereby frozen, pending a complete investigation into financial misconduct. Another pause. Slower, Mr. Ashworth. This court is referring your conduct to both the Texas State Bar and the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Texas. I would advise you strongly not to leave the state. She looked at him one final time over her glasses. What was in her expression wasn't anger. It was something quieter than anger, more final. The expression of a person who has watched human beings make catastrophic decisions for 2 decades and still has not fully adjusted to the waste of it all. You walked into this courtroom this morning and mocked a man for his shirt. Her voice did not rise. It didn't need to. I suggest you use the drive home to think carefully about what this day has cost you. The gavel came down once, clean, final, like the period at the end of a sentence that had taken 3 years to write. Trevor gathered his papers with unsteady hands. He didn't look at Vanessa, didn't look at me, didn't look at the judge, the gallery, or the process servers still standing quietly near his table. He picked up his expensive leather portfolio and walked out of that courtroom without saying a single word to anyone. The doors swung shut behind him. Vanessa sat alone at the plaintiff's table. The tailored suit, the perfect hair, the carefully assembled confidence she had carried in as armor gone, leaving only a woman alone in a room where everything had just collapsed in every direction at once. She was crying. Not performance tears. Frightened, genuine tears. The tears that come when the story you have been telling yourself for 3 years falls apart in 45 minutes in public. She turned toward me. Daniel, her voice broke on that single word. Please. I didn't know everything he was doing, not all of it. Please. I stood. I looked at her for a long moment, not with anger. I had carried anger for exactly 1 week, 3 years ago, and then I let it go, because anger is a terrible architect. It builds crooked. Everything it raises eventually leans and falls. What I felt looking at Vanessa was something sadder than anger, and quieter than victory. The specific grief of a man looking at what something used to be and understanding, completely and permanently, that it can never return to that. Not because of what she did, because of who she chose to become while doing it. Take care of yourself, Vanessa, I said quietly. Not for me. Marcus needs his mother to be well. That is the only thing I want for you. I turned and walked out. Outside, the afternoon light was hitting the courthouse steps, the way autumn light hits things in Houston, warm, unhurried, completely indifferent to what had just taken place inside its buildings. The city was going about its business, traffic on Commerce Street, someone's radio carrying a half-familiar song from somewhere nearby, a perfectly ordinary afternoon that had no idea it had just been the most significant day of my life. I stood at the top of the steps, drew a slow breath, and let it stay in my lungs for a moment. It was over. 3 years of patience. 3 years of paper bag lunches and a wheezing coffee maker, and a kitchen table with one uneven leg. 3 years of showing up in plain, ordinary clothes to school events, while Vanessa and Trevor sent each other messages laughing at me, absolutely certain of themselves. 3 years of saying nothing while other people said everything. Done. Marcus was waiting at the bottom of the steps, 17 years old. Backpack over one shoulder. The way teenagers carry backpacks like the strap is more of a suggestion than a real structural commitment. He was trying to read my face, the way he had been trying to read my face his whole life. Because this kid noticed everything. He always had. Dad. He pushed off the railing. Did we win? I walked down the steps and put my arm around his shoulders. I didn't go in there to win, Marcus. He looked up. Then what did you go in there to do? To tell the truth. He thought about that. That particular silence of his, the one that means he is actually processing something, not just waiting for the conversation to move on. What's the difference between winning and telling the truth? I looked down at my plain $20 shirt, smoothed it once with my palm. Winning is about you, I said. The truth is about something much bigger than you. He nodded slowly. He didn't fully understand it yet. That was all right. We had time, and now we had that time together. We walked to my 2019 Camry. No hired car, no champagne, no moment designed for any audience but the two of us. Just a father and his son, the quiet of a Houston afternoon, and 3 years of patience that had finally, completely, and permanently paid off. I still have that shirt, folded carefully, in a box on the top shelf of my closet. Not as a trophy, I'm not that kind of man. Trophies are for people who need reminding that they once did something worth being proud of. I kept it as something different. A reminder that simplicity is not surrender, that a quiet life is not a small life, that the most dangerous person in any room is not the loudest one, not the best dressed one, not the one carrying a 5-pound file and a burgundy tie and the absolute, unshakable certainty that the contest is already won. It is the person who has been doing their work in silence for years. Trevor Ashworth walked into that courtroom with every visible advantage. Money, connections, confidence, months of case preparation against a man he had written off before ever meeting him. I walked in with a thin folder, a plain shirt, and an enormous amount of patience. He never had a chance. This story taught me something I want to leave you with. The mistake most people make when they are underestimated is that they try to correct the record immediately. They defend themselves in the moment. They raise their voice, make their case, spend their energy convincing people who have already decided not to listen. What I understand now, what that entire 3 years taught me, is that you do not owe your demonstration to the people who dismiss you. You owe it to the truth. And the truth, given enough time and enough careful work, does not need your help arriving. One thing you can do today right now, if this story landed somewhere real in you, is write down the thing you have been waiting for permission to build quietly, not the thing you want to announce. The thing you want to do. Set a timeline. Start the first step. The patience is the strategy. And the question I want to leave you sitting with, in the moments when you have been dismissed or underestimated or laughed at, did you react to the person laughing, or did you go home and go to work? Before I go, I genuinely want to hear from you. Drop a 1 in the comments if you think Daniel handled this exactly right. Drop a 2 if you think he should have confronted Vanessa before the hearing. Drop a 3 if there was a moment in this story that hit closer to home than you expected. And tell me, where are you watching from? What time is it where you are right now? I'm always curious about the people who find their way to these stories. Have you ever been in a room where someone decided what you were worth based on how you were dressed, or what your life looked like from the outside? Tell me in the comments. Those stories matter too. If you are not subscribed yet, I am asking you directly, person to person, not a pop-up, not a button prompt. Just me. Subscribe. Hit like if this earned it, and I will see you in the next one. This is a fictional story inspired by real emotional experiences, fully rewritten and reimagined in Houston, Texas, to create original content. Any resemblance to real people or events is coincidental,